Olá, eu sou Ana Recaleli, repórter do Metrópoles, e hoje eu vou conversar com diretora e roteirista e co-diretora do filme Hold Your Breath, que é estrelado por Sarah Paulson. Vamos lá? I have a few questions, but first of all, how did you come up with the idea for the movie, especially because this Dust Bowl era is not often explored in cinema? How did you come up with the story?
I think we watched a documentary about the this era, and there's kind of like a classic novel, Grapes of Wrath, about it. But as we watched it, we thought this is kind of a fascinating setting for a genre story because you have the land itself has sort of turned against the residents, and it's terrifying in its ability to sort of block out the sun and come in these walls pushing over the town, but also to sort of get in through the cracks and make people sick. It felt like a really unique setting to try to tell like a psychological horror story.
Yeah, it's really interesting for you to say this psychological aspect because I was thinking, how do you manage to make a balance between the real and the horror parts of the movie?
It's kind of the I think the biggest challenge, and I think what you're always hoping is that there's this sense of the reality of the setting kind of and the challenges of that are what's influencing your character to turn this way or that, and that you're almost braiding these threats together. And it's for us just very much grounding the psychology. We really wanted to make sense of why this mother was having such a hard time. And I think it's not only this unending task of trying to push out the dust and keep her daughter safe, but also her past trauma of having lost a child and the fear of that happening again. It quite naturally, you could have threats from the setting push the character into a darker direction.
Yeah, and I would like to ask you about Sarah Paulson. How was like working with her? How did you get this amazing performance out of her?
Working with Sarah was amazing. She is such a talented, nuanced performer that she was really able to show, the opening of the film, she was really able to embody Margaret's strength and sense of control over this, very tenuous, difficult situation of keeping her children safe. And then as the film goes along and these external things are really building up around her, is to really show Margaret's evolution along that path while constantly also showing that tension within Margaret as she's dealing with all these different things, all the different nuances as she takes Margaret's character on this arc.
Yeah, she's incredible at at preparing and understanding where Margaret is in her journey, how able she is to push that anxiety down and sort of have the appearance of everything's in control versus how porous is she, how much are those fears coming out of her. So she hopefully we had it in our heads, but her preparation was incredible for that. But also just on like a physical level, she's such a hard worker. She wanted everything to feel real and frightening. So there were times where we just thought, I don't think we can throw any more dust at this poor woman. And she wanted more. She wanted to be interacting with the environment in a real way.
Yeah, and it's really cool that you spoke about the dust because watching the movie, I was really afraid of the dust, and everything seems like a smog. And talking about your work, How was like collaborating again, and it was like some difficult times because you had like opposite ideas, or you were like always on the same page?
I think we're often on the same
Yeah.
page because we kind of learned together. We've been working together for a while, but I don't think either of us are ever frightened if we have a disagreement because often those disagreements yield something more interesting, you know, or you know, I never think it's a great thing when a filmmaker gets to a point where no one questions them, you know, and we have a sort of built-in system where we can question one another and hear, this is exactly why I think we should make this choice or that choice.
Yeah, I think both of us are always, we just want the best decision made that's in the best service of the film, regardless of who it's coming from. So I think that's our kind of motto.
And thank you about that. And talking about inspirations, what were your inspirations for this movie, like aesthetics and also the story overall, beyond the documentary, of course?
Well, I think we made the choice to inside to be quite close with Margaret, to always sort of be in her mind. Like we're very close, we have access to her eyes. And we did that because we wanted the sense of almost claustrophobia, that, you know, they're trapped inside, but also through the cracks, the dust is coming in. But then we also wanted to play with, when they get outside, there are these massive, expansive shots of the landscape, but they don't provide much relief because it's just dust in every direction. Yeah. And we talked about, over the course of the film, you know, just subtle things like when you see outside early in the film, you see the sky, you see pieces of blue. And as the film goes along, your camera is sort of coming up, and you're seeing less and less of the sky and more of the dust in every direction. But visually, I feel like we didn't really, didn't go after a certain film for a look. It was more photographs and.
Yeah, there was a lot of, you know, period photographs that were taken in the Dust Bowl during the 30s that provided a lot of great inspiration, not just for the visuals, but also some of like the design of the images of the expanse and the tighter images. And I think we pulled from that probably much more than we did other films.
Yeah, it is really interesting because I was reading a lot of things about the movie, and one of the things that caught my attention was that this feeling of being trapped inside, like claustrophobic, and the dangerous, it's like coming in through some small holes. It's kind of like the pandemic, you know, like this feeling of being trapped inside.
Very much so. I wrote it before the pandemic, but I absolutely noticed that, you know, this sense of even just masking outside, you know, and the idea of this sort of invisible threat, like, especially early in the pandemic, we didn't know exactly how it was spreading, you know, even the mail that came into your house and packages was like, is this okay to touch, you know? Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking to me. Obrigada por assistirem até aqui. Não se esqueçam de se inscrever no canal e também sigam o Metrópoles nas redes sociais. Acesse metrópoles.com para ler a reportagem completa, que também ficou muito legal. Beijos e até a próxima!